Hi there, I'm Karen Dunn of KMD Productions. From the equipment manufacturers to the engineers to the business people behind the scenes. Over the years, every member of the Pro Audio corner of the music industry have become family to me, and it's my job to bring the whole eclectic crew together. Each episode, I'll introduce you to one of these characters and open a window into my world of creating community in Pro Audio. Thanks for tuning in to One and Done. I wanted to welcome our guests, Marcella Araica, mix engineer based in Miami, Robert Scovill, front of house engineer, and Michael-Pearson-Adams, who is a product manager at Waves.
So, with a jackhammer.
With a jackhammer. Thank you very much. The joys of recording at home. So instead of me introducing you, what I'd like for you guys to do is introduce yourselves. Just if you can do this, Michael and Robert, in a short amount of time, just condense your life, and so everybody will know who you are.
It'll be easy. Why didn't you mention Marcella there? It's like Marcella's life is way more awesome than it's like. I feel like we got picked on there. Pick on Marcella.
So, Michael, why don't you go first and see if you can edit your life?
Cool. Okay, so here's the abbreviation of me. Number one, I'm Australian, which is amazing. Everybody wants to be Australian. It's okay. Not everybody can be perfect. Secondly, I'm a fine art photographer. I have my own gallery. I had one in Miami. It's closed. I am just signed a lease and I'm opening a new one in Noosa in Queensland in Australia as soon as we get permission. Thirdly, I'm a product manager for Waves Audio. So I invent new products. And also I'm the director of training and development at Waves Audio, which means I train the trainers and I tell people how to make things sound good. One of the easiest ways to make things sound good is by doing it in a foreign accent. Everybody thinks you're way more credible. And lastly, and definitely not least, I have a book called Fuck It, What's the Worst That Could Happen? Because that's been my entire life.
Do you have a copy of it? Right
Karen,
here?
How's that?
That's good.
Actually, I don't, but I can. We can superimpose it. But anyway, it's michaelpa.com. Next person.
Do you know what my necklace says?
No, because it just looks on camera like a little dot.
It says fuck it.
Oh. Wow, you got swag already.
So the thing that I found most interesting, my good friends, about that last statement from our host was not that she said her necklace said fuck it. It was the way she went, it says fuck it.
Okay, Marcella, you go next.
Oh my goodness. How do I go back behind him? I should have went first. I'm Marcella Araica, recording mixing engineer from Miami, Florida. I'm born and raised out here. I'm a mom to a 7-year-old amazing son. I have a recording studio down here called Dream Asylum Studios. I've been in the business now 20 years, pretty much to the date now. So this is a anniversary year for me of being in the music business and following my career and passion as an engineer. So yeah, I can't even believe we're 20 years went and here we are. So happy to be here.
Great. Okay, Robert,
Well,
wrap this up.
Marcella, don't look up. It'll be 40 before you know it. I'm in my 43rd year
Oh my God.
as an audio professional. I've been a front of house mixer, a studio owner, a record label owner. I also work in the manufacturing sector. I work with Avid. I started with them in the very late 90s, early 2000s to help them develop a live sound product. And I'm still going out on the road and mixing. I can't stop. I don't know what I'm doing.
So have you guys ever directly or indirectly worked together?
No. Well,
Don't think so.
Robert and I have not.
Maybe indirectly with Michael because of Waves, but that'd be it.
I have directly worked.
Well, also I worked at Avid for a year. Remember, Robert? I was part of Gil's team.
Course, yeah.
As an HD specialist. You say, of course. You forgot.
Totally. Well, the right hand and the left hand are very, very different things over there. So.
Marcella and I have done a couple of really cool projects together. I got to sit in front of the camera and interview her for a great video a few years ago, and then I got to help train her how to do ambisonic audio stuff as well, which was a ton of fun. And pre-pandemic and pre-nearly dying of heart surgery, I used to pop into the studio randomly as well. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
COVID messed that
Okay,
all
well,
up.
I have a question. Yeah. I have a question then. So let's say we have a project that Robert is doing front of house for. So it's live and Marcella's going to mix it. And we're using Michael as a go between with whatever products he has. So, what would be the perfect scenario for you guys to create the best product possible?
Mm.
Well, if I'm going to capture it, I'm going to be the one that gets blamed if it's bad. I just say that right out of the gate. Okay. So I got to do my job really good right out of the gate, and then get it in some form that Marcella can handle it and deal with it in the studio setting, and make it palatable for the audience. So.
Yeah.
Robert, I feel a certain amount of resentment and anger there about how people treat front of house people. It's like, maybe we should take this offline, but
You noticed that, did you? Was it?
I did, and I want to give you a big group hug through the camera. So Marcella and you are both going to make things sound amazing. I'm going to be the guy on stage with a megaphone talking it. And I'm kind of good at that. It's like, but yeah, Karen, so there you go. So they make it sound good. I give it an accent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the accent's always it, right?
David Attenborough approved that. You can't have somebody with an American accent talking about whales. Give a British guy, then everybody believes it.
Okay, so with the pandemic, which is continuing to go on, so much has changed, and all of you have had to change how you do work. What are some moments from the past years that you're most proud of being able to adapt or create, or how you've changed? So, Marcella, why don't we start with you?
Well, I mean, starting from the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, everything, I had to shut down my studio and work, completely from home, which wasn't hard, as the only difference is, I wasn't in my haven of a studio where I had the perfect acoustics in my room. So I did a lot of mixing headphone wise, which I hadn't done a lot. I would more reference mixes once I got to a certain point. But when I started working from home, a lot of my mixing was done on headphones. So, it took a little bit of adjusting. I did have some monitors in place. I mainly stayed on Auratones because I didn't want anything too, you know, glitz and glam as far as monitoring wise. I wanted everything pretty just down the middle. And, I got some pretty great records done in those first few months. And since then, I've noticed that I've been incorporating more of the headphone mixing. It's not my favorite. I have, for me, I feel like the ears get fatigued a lot quicker when I'm on headphones. So, but it does, because I was on it for a few months that way, like I have grown to work in that way, which helps a lot, like with my traveling when, I'm on the road and I don't necessarily have the exact setup. I'm in hotel rooms. I can still work and
Right.
feel confident about that. Yeah.
Okay. And Michael, I know we used to do Waves events all the time, and that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
So that's just one part of everything has changed for you. How have you adapted and gone forward?
I think the most important thing for me in 2000, I was about to say last year, but in 2020 was I wanted to try and work out how I could help other people and help other people stay sane during the pandemic. Not because I'm Mother Teresa, but because I understand that if you're in the music industry or the audio industry and you're suddenly not allowed to do what you're supposed to do, that's a huge part of your identity that in a lot of cases you feel is ripped away from you. So I put quite a lot of emotional effort into what I ended up calling the Waves quarantine sessions that went for a year and a half, just to give people a place that they could come and hang. That was one thing I did. But as far as how it affected how I do my job. It's like the art gallery closed. So that side, everything suddenly went online again. So I started, and on the wave side as well. So everything suddenly started to have to be camera and lights. And one of the things I had to teach myself was how to do what I'm doing now, which is I'm talking to you, Karen, I'm talking to you, Marcella, and I'm talking to you, Scobes, but I'm not. You're on the screen somewhere, but I'm talking to the camera because and that's what I try and do now is I try and teach people that to talk to people and have an impact in people's lives via a camera. You can't look them in the eye. You have to look the camera in the eye. And it's, pardon my French, it's fucking hard for people to kind of like reprogram themselves after so many years of being born and living and doing that. So it's kind of one of my goals right now is how to help people impact others via a camera, because it can be done. It's not quite the same, but that's the main way that it impacted me.
Okay. And Robert,
can I ask a couple of questions before I answer?
Yeah.
One, I'll just jump to Michael because he just came up. Michael, did you find one of the challenges of talking into the camera, especially in these kind of rooms, compared to speaking in public, how much more of a challenge it is to read the room?
One of my biggest problems in 2020 and 21 was the fact that my entire last 10 years or so, actually 20 or so, leading up to getting off a plane, nearly dying in Los Angeles, going into heart surgery, going into a pandemic, being locked down, not being able to fly, was the fact that I live on stage. I do masterclasses, public speaking, and I feed off that. And one of the things that really raised my issues with anxiety and depression was the fact that I would do an online event for Waves, and there'd be like 12,000 people watching. It's amazing. But at the end of the day, I would then disconnect and it would still be me in a dark room with a camera and a light and nothing. And there's no interaction. There's no one to feed off. It's like, and it was nearly the same as when I was a kid touring with In Excess, when we would get off stage and then we'd be in the hotel room, and it was the first time I really got to experience, oh my God, this sucks. This is a high followed by an extreme low. And it's very, very hard to deal with unless you actually face it and you try and deal with it head on. But it's a mental head fuck. And I found that, Robert, that's a good point. Live streaming to an audience, you can't read the audience. You can't read anything. But when it finishes and it stops, you're in a room by yourself, and it can be really horrible. It's a hard one. You're right. You're absolutely right.
That's awesome. I identify so much with so many things you said.
Same. Yeah.
All right. So back to the question of the day here so far. So I would say to you, I mean, ironically for me, the pandemic shutdown really did not change my life. I mean, I had been a remote employee for Avid for, I don't know, 12, 15 years already. And I'm a touring guy. You're the ultimate remote employee when you're a touring guy. I mean, you're never around, your coworkers short of being on tour, and I can identify with what Michael said there. I've said this many, many times, and I think we're going to see this coming out of the pandemic. If you tour for a living, I mean, it can be a really hard existence. But when you're away from it for a while, all you remember is the romantic parts of it. And it makes you want to go back. And I'm going to experience it this year. I know I am. And I've experienced it before where you go through rehearsals, get out on that tour, do that first show, and it's just, you're flying high. Until that moment when you go back to the hotel room and you walk through those doors with that bag behind you and just go, oh man. Now, the thing that has changed there with the pandemic is that part of it has gotten way worse, because on tour now, you're generally required to live in a bubble. It was enough of a bubble before, but now we're in a super bubble, so to speak. If you're downtown in the urban centers, all stores are closed. All the shops close early. There's no restaurants open. There's none of that kind of vagabond gypsy life out there, because as soon as you get to a hotel, there's no hotel services. There's no room service.
Right.
There's no bar. There's, all of that part of it that was really cool to keep you out there and kind of balance things from this incredible workload. All of that's gone now. So now mentally, it is really a challenge to be out there right now. Really a challenge.
It really is. And just to add to one thing, Robert, one of the things which I did to help remind myself that I can't let it there's no real way to say this without it sounding kind of weird, but one of the biggest enemies I had in the last 2 years was the voices in my head and anxiety and depression when most of my identity was ripped away. So what I did was I put a mute sign on my wrist, and it's on the inside of my wrist because it reminds me to stop over talking to myself. Just deal with things, keep moving on, and don't listen to the voices in the head. Just kind of like listen to the positivity and keep moving. But if I can impact one person ever with teaching people how to deal with this kind of camera stuff, then as far as I'm concerned, Karen, I've won.
Right. So speaking of mental health, everybody's situation changed, and it's been changed for a few years now. So, like, Marcella, how do you deal with, or do you have periods where you are feeling down, and because it's not how it was before, it probably will never be how it was before. So how do you get past that feeling and just move on?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely go through a lot of self doubts and sadness, depression. Just in regular life itself, like, I think it's just part of, everyday, circumstances that, some days you can kind of get over things pretty easy. And then some days you feel like, some weights have been attached to you and you just feel like you're sinking, and you have to figure out how to detach from those weights, right? And just kind of get above water. And some of the ways that I feel that I do that is, I already feel like I'm a very social person, but what people don't know about me is I'm very to myself a lot more than I am socially. I think when I am a social person, people see this exuberant, just personality about me that they don't even think that I'm a person that likes to go off the grid quite a bit. It's for me. I sometimes I need it. I need to go off the grid sometimes. This Montana trip that I just came back from a few days ago. If I was in Montana for a few days, I got back last night. A lot of that was I wanted to get away. I was with family, but I spent a lot of time alone sometimes, just sitting on top of that mountain and just thinking and praying and trying to figure out what I want, like as clear as possible, because a lot of time in this business, it's so noisy. It's just so busy. The phones are going off. The emails are nonstop. There's just so much coming at you. Technology is constantly turning. As an engineer, I need to be on top of these things. I'm a mom, so it's just like a freight train constantly going. And sometimes I just need the quiet, And unfortunately, I don't live in a countryside, where I can just be in quiet. Like, I live in a city and it's constantly madness going around. So for me, I feel like I really do attack by, trying to sit in solitude sometimes and just really trying to get that clear mind. And I'm a big, Karen, you know this about me. I love working out. I think that's a big way of how I find my emotional balance and just get that feel good energy from the jump in the beginning of the morning. Just go out and get that workout done. Over the holidays, I bought myself a Peloton, and I'm so proud of it. I'm a Peloton owner now because I wake up sometimes as early as 5 a.m. and I want to sometimes just get up and go in the gym, but I can't because I can't leave my son and I'm not going to wake him up. So I ended up getting a Peloton and I just jump on the bike. I joined these classes. It's an amazing community. And by the time I get off of that, like, I feel so good, and I feel so clear-minded. So I do feel like I go through a lot of this, but I'm not somebody that tries to brush it off. I don't want to brush it off because I feel like when I feel something, I don't want to ignore what I'm feeling. And I really do try to spend a lot of time trying to go through what I'm like, what the issues are, or maybe there is no issues. Sometimes it's just like, why do I feel like this?
Right.
But you have to actually do
Right.
exactly what you said. You have to actually listen to it
Right.
and pay attention and go, okay, what is this?
Yeah.
Analyze it.
exactly.
One of the other things that you said that I relate to is the being by yourself thing. It's like the amount of people who think that I'm like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, bouncy, bouncy, bouncy all the time. My favorite times are when I'm by myself in silence, in the woods, with a camera, in the middle of nowhere. I haven't talked to a soul in days. Those are my
Yeah.
perfect times. And if it wasn't for those times, I wouldn't be able to
Right.
do what I do in the rest of my life. I wouldn't be able to. It just wouldn't be possible. You can't be on all the time without
Yeah.
something going wrong.
And even virtually, you're on all the time.
Yeah.
Because I know, like for in-person events, there's a period where you're on. There's people there, you're doing your event, and then it's done. But virtually, you're always on because there's so much happening online. There's all these
Yeah.
meetings, then there are events, and just everything is online. So you don't really have as much time to just dial it down.
Right.
I mean, we got 3 creatives in this room here, and I would submit to you all, I think you're going to buy off on this, that when it's noisy all the time, it's very difficult to be creative.
Right.
Yeah, the science is there. A bored brain is a creative brain. It's got to have some downtime. And I mean, without a doubt, I do my most creative stuff, my best work when I'm alone, out on a workout. My best work is done in the shower in the morning, and you can read into that anything you want, but my best work is done in the shower. I have a notepad sitting on my sink and have stepped out of the shower dripping wet to write something down going, oh, you can't lose that. Okay, hang on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I sense that this is similar in the room here. I mean, I'll say it in a weird way. This is going to be hard for any of you to believe, but I actually enjoy my own company, so, I have no problem being around myself. I'm an only child. I think it served me very, very well throughout my life. So, I like the solitude, but, it kind of makes those moments when you're around everybody really special.
I agree.
I love being around lots of people, but I got to balance that.
I agree too.
Some really isolated time,
But the other thing that I've also learned through, especially the last 2 or 3 years, is that you actually, to get through times like this, especially as a creative person, seeming as we spend most of our time beating ourselves up and saying, is that good enough? You have to be able to, whether it's meditation, whether it's just complete silence, whether it's exercise or all 3, you have to be able to actually look inside yourself, see yourself for who you are, understand some of yourself, and then work out what you can do with the tools that you have. Because otherwise, you just turned up into a blithering mess. And I know that because I turned into a blithering mess and ended up in hospital. So I think, back to the original question, Karen, that you asked us, how have things changed? I think I can say for all 3 of us, we were probably all very aware of who we were before, but we're all 3 of us very, very aware and attentive to what's going on in our heads now, more so than we may have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, I would even add to that, having the shutdown, I mean, it depends. It plays into your personality so much. And, I've kind of preached this mentality to my kids and, to people who are willing to listen, whatever, is like, you got to, it's kind of this worldview that you have to have of stop viewing the world as conquering obstacles. You've got to find the opportunities. Like you've got to view something as, what are the opportunities here? What are the opportunities? Not what are the obstacles? What are the opportunities? And what Marcella opened up with is a great example, I think, of where the opportunity is still there. If I adjust, I mix on oratones, I go to headphones, I go to, all of these things. And I would submit to you, Marcella, you tell me whether this is true or not. I would bet at the end of the day, it's made you more resilient. It's made you more nimble.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways has probably made you a better engineer. It's probably, I'm guessing it's probably allowed you to really appreciate what it's like to go into a $2,000 a day studio and mix.
Oh, yeah.
all of that thing, all of those are positive byproducts of what's going on, and they're there if you want to see them.
It's a great outlook. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but how do you get that outlook? How do you not just get overwhelmed by everything and just shut down? And not everybody can change and move forward.
Yeah.
Right. And
I don't know. I can only speak for me, right? I mean, I
Okay.
can certainly help people. You can take my lead if you want. I mean, it gets back to, for me, it's the fitness thing. And people really misinterpret, like I do all these extreme events, this, Karen, extreme endurance events, all these things. And, they require an incredible amount of preparation to get ready, but people don't get that it has nothing to do with getting my body ready. That is all about building resilience and toughness mentally. That's what you're building when you're doing these workouts,
Yeah.
these extreme workouts. And I mean, our industry, the media industry is so filled with bullshit about what fitness is, like they equate it with weight loss and body image and all these things. It's like, man, it's just so incorrect. 3 minutes a day will get you the body. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It is
It's
bullshit.
bullshit.
And where it goes even further is the simple fact that it's always missed that, you say fitness, fit for what? Fit to walk around the block once, fit to go on a hike, fit to
But we don't include
bike
the
a marathon,
mental in
fit
that
to
fitness.
but there's no point in that fitness in any of those magazine articles or clickbait or anything else. It's like, let's talk about your mental fitness. And the mental fitness, honestly, is where the magic really happens. Marcella has 2 or 3 stories that I love hearing from her and I will never grow sick of. And one of them is really a fuck it, what's the worst that could happen moment, which is, how she got the Miss Largo nickname and the fact that she just went in there and just did it. And it's like without the mental head game of being able to go, okay, cool. So I believe I can do this, but I actually have to push myself to actually go out there and put myself into an uncomfortable potential situation to see if I can. That's where you develop.
Yeah.
That's where you move forward.
There's no growth without
And I think
there's no growth without
no,
that.
there isn't. And one of the things that I think all of us can agree on is the fact that every single one of us has constantly heard people go, oh, I wish I could do that. The simple fact is they can, but they have to stop sitting on the couch or sitting in their mental couch and actually go out and go, okay, I need to be uncomfortable for a few minutes to see how this water is before I can move into that water as my new comfort zone.
It's my favorite.
That's where shit happens.
My favorite mental trigger that I carry a couple of them that I always kind of engage when I need to. And one of my favorites is, hey, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's where you have to be. Okay. And, I know the minute I hesitate on something thinking, I don't know if that's right for me, I know I'm going to go do it. I know I'm going to go try it.
Exactly. If I don't know if that's right for me, okay, fuck it. I'm going to try it.
Okay, that means I got to go.
My entire career was basically based off that. I was, I was a woman, right, in this industry, and at a time it was so uncomfortable at times for many different reasons, But I just had to be like comfortable with the fact that this was my passion. This is what I wanted to do, right? And I wasn't going to allow any type of circumstance to really push me back from my dream. And at the end of the day, like it, when we talk about the fitness thing, I always tell people like, I work out, looking a certain way. That's like the bottom of what I work.
That's the byproduct.
Yeah, it's like it is what it is. Yeah. The reason why I work out 4, 5, 6 days a week and as hard as I do is because of the challenge that it brings me mentally, and the satisfaction that I get, the gratification when I get through those workouts. That I don't feel like, man, I don't know if I can do that. Could I do? Well, let's try. And it's just like when I get through that. So Karen, when you ask that question, like how do people? It's not looking at something and questioning it. It's just saying to yourself, you know what? Let me get through it. Because you're never going to know. If you keep trying to overthink things, you're never going to get done with whatever it is that you want to do.
you're in your own way.
Exactly. So it's a lot of it is just like saying like, all right, let me, like you just said, let me move myself out the way and get through, because anybody can really do things that if they really want to do it. The minute you stand in your own
That's
way,
what
it's not going to happen.
I'll tell you. If you didn't have some of that skill before the pandemic hit, though, man, you're going to be challenged.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
That's what the younger
come on,
generation, I
let's face it.
worry about them. And I have my 7-year-old,
Yeah.
I talk to him. You would think I am like the head coach of, Alabama, that's my mentality.
Maybe Georgia,
Maybe,
not
yeah,
Alabama.
you're right. After last night, oh boy. Yeah, you're right. But I really talk to him about just being so headstrong, whenever he tells me, Mom, I don't think I can, go back. You don't what? He's like, I mean, I want to try. You have to try. It's like I have to kind of reprogram him because they get, at this age, this is where you have to mold them. I wish, I wasn't allowed to play sports when I was his age. I came from a very strict Latin upbringing where girls didn't play sports, right? That's what it was. It was that generation. And I just wanted to play like football so badly as a kid. And my parents were like, no, you can be a cheerleader because that's what girls do. And I was like, cheerleading, this is terrible. But then I actually felt right. I was like, I didn't even want to wear a skirt. Like, I'm like, I don't want to do this. But then I found the joy in it because there was competition. There was, it was called competition, competition cheerleading. And then for me, that felt like, okay, I can do this because you have to be a certain type of headstrong individual to kind of go out there and, be, in front of these judges and they're judging you on everything. And it was just like a different type of mentality that I had to go through. It wasn't just me going to these games and shouting out stupid little things, at the players like, oh, go, go. It was like actually like about the movements and how, perfect you were doing them. And, it was building that headstrong, mentality that I worry about that younger generation, like you said, Robert, because like, right now it's, they're so young, they don't even realize what's going on, and it's like, it's up to us, it's up to the generation that's above them, that has been through some of these situations that you can go back and kind of help them and guide them.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
I love Michael's title of his book. I absolutely cannot wait to read it because I've used that term so many times with my boys. I have. And, and it's funny what their answer is when you say, son, fuck it. What's the worst that can happen? Almost always their answer is humiliation. I'm going to be humiliated. And I think
in the eyes of who is my question.
Let me finish on that because my response to that is always, dude, nobody can humiliate you without your permission. Okay. So that can't happen. But, it's a function of the culture that we live in, this kind of cruel, humiliating culture. I mean, face it, we've had entire TV series that focus on nothing but trying to humiliate other people. That's the focus of the entire show that they've grown up on,
And Robert, I'll take that a bit further. It's like one of the things that I absolutely passionately despise right now on YouTube is this advent of this invention of these channels that are literally small cuts of people failing at things so that people can laugh at them.
Laugh at them. I mean,
I mean, okay. Now, if I take that back, let's take it back to Sydney, 1991. I was a producer at a recording studio in Bondi Junction in Sydney, and I lived next to this huge park in Sydney called Centennial Park, and I wanted to learn how to rollerblade. Because there was huge tracks around there. And the first day that I went there, I fell over and somebody laughed at me. And I felt absolutely embarrassed and horrible because everybody else was speeding past me like they were fucking biggest skaters from the Olympics. So then what that caused me to do was actually go back into Centennial Park at night in the dark and teach myself how to rollerblade. Now, on one hand, my mother was like, oh, that's very innovative, well done. But on the other hand, as I talk about that when I do talks, that was incredibly bad. I shouldn't have done that. And somebody should have encouraged me not to do that. Because what I did was I tried to teach myself out of the public eye so that I didn't get humiliated, rather than thinking everybody has to start somewhere. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody starts somewhere. One of the things that I love doing, and I know both of you, I've seen both of you teach. So one of the things I love doing, and I know you agree, is like nobody is ever wrong. It's just it's a step in their journey. Yeah, and you encourage those steps, because if they ever feel like they can't step forward without somebody biting them or some kind of humiliation, you've just ruined somebody's life. And what Marcella said is also right. It's like, I'm scared for what's happening for the future of the kids, because the entire media is designed right now to laugh at people's humiliation. And it's tragic to me. So this is why I'm constantly trying to say to people, listen, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. You just need to take micro steps and just keep on moving yourself forward, just bit by bit, and ignore what everybody else says.
You have to have that mental toughness to be able to keep going forward.
You have to train yourself to that mental toughness. But if you do it in small steps.
Do you know how you can get that? By working out.
Right.
Yeah.
And challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Mentally and physically.
Well, physically is the byproduct. Right. Make it mentally. So just take the hard road constantly and build resilience there. I'm proof positive it works. I swear to you.
I had to, I've been working out with the TRX, and there's a move where you put your feet, you have your hands on the floor like you're doing a plank. You put your feet in the straps and you pull your knees up, right?
Yeah.
So you're going
that's a good one.
First one I did, I thought I was going to die. Second one, he said, don't do as many. You don't have to. Just stop when you want. Are you kidding? No, I'm going to do as many as you told me, even if I'm dying. and I went back the next day and did 3 more sets, because I'm going to overcome this thing. This is not going to overcome me.
Yeah.
And so for work, I went to Jules and Steph, the producers of this podcast, and I'd gone out walking at 6 a.m. with my dogs when I had the best. I'm alone with them. It's quiet. And I thought, I should do a podcast. And then I thought, what a horrible idea. I'd have to be on camera. I have to talk to people. And I made the unfortunate decision to tell Jules and Steph. They thought it was a great idea. So
who else annoyed you about that?
Michael, you did too. But it's another thing of I'm facing a situation that makes me totally uncomfortable. So I can't not do it.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Well, I think one of the things I was successful with my boys was trying to get them to take the pressure off of the moment. It's like, hey, there's not so much riding on this moment. My son was skateboarding, trying to do a trick. It's like, dude, you're going to fail. You're going to succeed after a whole lot of failures here. Just relax. And
there's going to be repeated failures, but those failures are called practice.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, but again, you got to kind of take the pressure off of it. I kind of take the pressure off myself when I'm doing big shows, like especially if I mess up. If I make a mistake, you just own it. I mean, I've told many of artists, look, dude, I fucked up way bigger shows than yours. Okay, so it just kind of kills the moment. You're just like, okay, let's get on with it. Let's go.
But how do you
what's
do
the next
that?
one?
Marcella, have you messed up some mix so badly? But how do you own it and move past it and not be afraid to do another one?
There is no way that you can call yourself a professional if you have not fucked something up.
That's amen, sister.
There's
Preaching.
No way. Of course, I have messed up mixes, and some for some reason have even passed the cutting room floor. I don't know why, and I cringe when they come on the radio. But you learn from you just learn from them, right? Like you learn from when you screw things up, and they're lessons, and you just try to figure out, how do I not do this again, right? You have to be okay. I'm 20 years in, I still screw up. I may not screw up as much, but I do. Like sometimes I do. Like sometimes it just depends on what it is. I may print the wrong passes on something, just not being all the way focused on something. It happens. We're human. We're not here. We're not computers. We're not ones and zeros. We are humans. So we are going to mess things up, and you just have to, make sure that you dial in and not repeat it all the time, because as a professional, you should not be messing up all the time. That's the whole thing, right? So,
but you're gonna. I can remember sitting in mixing shows and stuff and just being so bad on some nights and just laughing at myself, just kind of going, dude, could you do this any worse right now? I mean, come on. I know there's still time. You could probably, do worse, but let's try to get it together here,
Can I share one of my first ever really epic ones that I thought that I thought literally, this is it. I'm never going to walk into a recording studio ever again. So one of my first ever fuck it, what's the worst that could happen moments happened the same day as fuck it, I'm never working in the industry again moments, which I think is actually a good thing. The main mixer at the studio was off sick. I was the assistant. I was there erasing Atari 10-inch tapes with the magnifying eraser one day and erasing 2-inch. They get a phone call from reception going, there's a guy in a suit here from a record label. He wants to know if you can do a last-minute session. Can you come out? So I go out, and the guy looks at me and he goes, are you the senior mix engineer? And seeing as I was the only one there, I went, yes. And he hands me a piece of paper and goes, this is the writer. It's last minute. I'm bringing the artist in 20 minutes. No problem. And I was like, okay. So I look at this and I'm like, what's a writer? And I was 20. I was 22. And 15 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. Hello, could I come in? And it's Jimmy Page. And followed by him was this tall guy, Robert Plant. And I literally, my butt cheeks clenched. So I spent 20 minutes. They wanted to do an acoustic session of No Quarter. And I can't remember what it was for at the time. I could probably go back and find out. But they wanted to do this whole acoustic album. And I was like, okay, so no problem. So I spent the better part of 45 minutes with Robert Plant sitting next to me, piping his voice through an Eventide 3000 and him going, listening. No, reverbs, delays, not quite right. Let's get that right again. We spent all that time, and then he goes, okay. And he walks into the voice booth. And he's singing, and he's checking things up, and he's singing all these different things. And I'm just in awe, like... And then he goes, okay, let's hear. And then he says the magic words. He goes, okay, let's have a listen to that back. And I went, was I supposed to be recording?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm so, and to his credit, he was like, he literally said into the microphone, how long have you been doing this? And I went, you don't want to know that.
If you check your watch,
Right. But I lived through it. And then I think it was 2 days later. Hold on. I looked at my guitar and Jimmy Page had signed it for me.
Oh, nice.
Fantastic.
So I lived through one of the fuck it, what's the worst that could happen moments and a mistake all on the same day. And everything was fine.
That's it.
I lived to see another
Given
day.
that your book is called this, Michael, I have to ask this question now. If you say, fuck it, what's the worst that could happen? Has the worst that could happen ever exceeded what you thought the worst could happen would be?
Oh, absolutely not. It's like one of the biggest mind games that the human brain plays on you is the simple fact that whatever you perceive in your head is the worst that could happen of any situation is going to be 20, 100 times worse than mostly ever will. Marcella just pointed out, there's a couple of things that she perceives as her mistakes that the rest of the world thinks are awesome, but she still hears on the radio and cringes. There's a lot of times that all of us, and Robert, you too, you've probably made some mistakes in shows that you've thought, why isn't the entire audience looking at me right now?
They have been at times, but that's another story.
But it doesn't matter. They went home. They still had a good show. The band still employed you and you're still here. The difference between making a mistake that's a career definer and making a mistake and developing is how you perceive it after the fact. And whether it's a learning moment or whether it's something that you just go give up. And giving up is definitely the worst thing you could possibly do. You have to look at it and go, you know what? It's like, it could be worse. It can always be worse.
How many shots did Michael Jordan miss? I mean, the percentage
exactly
he missed is so high compared to what he made.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about fuck it, what's the worst that could happen moments. Marcella, please, can you please tell the Miss Largo story?
Yeah, I'll share. So
please,
my
thank you.
Fuck it, what's the worst that can happen moment happened.
Hold on, I'm not comfortable yet. Oh, hold on. Okay.
Grab your popcorn. Okay. It happened a few months into my start as an engineer. I was actually an assistant engineer in a Missy Elliott session. I was working at the Hit Factory in Miami, and her engineer showed up late, and so he was showing up late, so she was ready to go. Missy Elliott was an artist that when she gets to the studio, she doesn't just like sit in the lounge and start ordering. She comes in and goes straight into the booth, and so she walks in and said, "Where's Carlos? Where's Carlos?" And basically he wasn't there, so she's like, "Can you record?" And I'm like, sure. But, I hadn't really had a lot of experience at this time. So I sat, I'm trying to record her. I'm trying to fly her hook over, but I was like doing it in slip mode, not in grid mode. So on playback, it was coming back all offbeat, and she got livid. She's like, "You're fucking up my vibe. What are you doing? You like, and she basically was like, "You're so slow." She called me a turtle, and she kicked me out the room. So I literally thought I was done. I was like, there's just no way I'm coming back from this. I'm done. Trevor's going to fire me. Like I've embarrassed myself, the studio, et cetera, et cetera. So I literally was going through it for hours. And I finally was just like, you know what? I got to figure this out. I gotta get great at recording. I got to know this Pro Tools, more than anybody, in the Hit Factory system. So I basically spent weeks, probably a few months, just learning quick keys, learning how to record, learning just how to be an engineer, a Pro Tools operator at that, as an engineer, and just really understanding how to like mix. So the next time I didn't get fired, let's say that. I was still the assistant in the room, but she didn't invite me back in the room for a long time. She didn't want me around. And then one day, again, her engineer was not there when she was ready to record. And she's like, man, she's like, I guess I'll use you, I guess, she didn't want to use me. And I was just like, I got this. Trust me, I got you, Missy. She's like, whatever. She's like, come on, turtle. So I'm like, watch this. I'm going to make sure I got this. So she goes in the booth, starts recording. I'm flying. I'm doing everything. I'm like the ninja now behind Pro Tools. And she could not believe it. She was like, oh my God. She's like, you're like a Murcielago. Basically called me like a Lamborghini of engineer because I was just flying through it. She could not believe how I had went from being the turtle to this like fast, and that's basically how my career really started to elevate, in working with her and eventually Timberland. And then I met my partner Danger, and here I am standing after 20 years from that fuck it, what's the worst that can happen moment. That was mine.
It's one of my favorite stories.
That's a really great story.
And because it's such a great story, but also you're such an amazing example of, you're telling me that I can't do something well? Watch this.
Give me a chance. I got this.
Well, I think all of us, I would be shocked if this wasn't true. All of us have had that moment in our career where it's either fold or focus. Right. What's it going to be? We're at the point, the junction point. We're at the crossroad right now. Are you going to go on or are you going to quit?
And I want to point out that the host of this show, who's interviewing us, also has had those moments that have been defining. And Karen is kicking ass. Karen has done some of the most amazing mentor programs for school students online. some of the most virtual breakout rooms, some of the most innovative online events I've ever seen have come out of this lady's brain in the last 2 years.
Agreed.
So as far as I'm concerned, Karen, you're awesome. So
Thank
don't
you,
be
Michael.
don't be sitting there quiet. Or I know you take credit really badly.
Can we move to the next topic? So some of the people who registered, they were able to submit questions. So Marcella, I'm going to ask you this one. As a woman in audio, this is from Dominic. As a woman in audio, what empowers you to be as successful as you are surrounded by male dominance / competition?
As successful as I am. So, I'm sorry, repeat it.
What empowers you to be as successful as you are surrounded by male dominance and competition?
Well, for me, I don't really focus so much on being, when I got into this, I never focused on being, I'm a woman in this business, right? It was more told to me than I even thought I was. When it was told to me, I'm like, really? Oh, okay, cool. Like, I didn't really create this I'm going to show out and show these men who's bought. Like, to me, it was just like, I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't know that being a woman engineer was such a scarce, I didn't know it was like a scarce, situation happening on this end. I just wanted to do music, right? I grew up I don't play music, I don't play instruments, I don't sing, but I wanted to be a part of the creative process. And engineering was how I found my way in. And, along the way, it was just that laser focus of wanting to be the best engineer, not female engineer, just an engineer. And as I started to become successful, obviously it was like I say, I don't emphasize on the gender. I just never have. I just love the job. And, I think not focusing so much and getting caught up in that lane of, being a woman doing this. I'm an engineer. You know what I mean? I just love what I do. And, because I love what I do and I find, other women that now want to enter this world, I love to be the person to mentor them and empower them and show them or tell them how to do this. This is, what is it that you want to do? Let me help you get to where you want, because a lot of women, they're just like, same as me. I just want to do music, but they don't know in what direction, so I love that I have the experience and so many years in this business that I can actually help guide other women now. But I think for me, the success did not come from me being so focused on being the woman. It was just being the best engineer I could be. So.
And you are. And you're constantly getting better. It's like what's one of the things I love. One of the things I love about you is that you are such an advocate for making sure that young women coming up behind you don't use the term young woman as some kind of handicap or difference. It's like you're a human being with just as many talents and in most cases better ears than men. So fucking use it and go and kick ass.
Absolutely.
I love that.
I always remain a student, 20 years in, people will say she's a professional, she's an expert at this, but I'm a student. I'm always learning. I'm always wanting to know what's the latest and greatest. I'm always trying to apply myself to something outside of Pro Tools, but at the end of the day, Pro Tools has my heart and soul. So it's really hard sometimes to kind of switch my brain over and use other DAWs that are out there. But at the end of the day, I try. I don't just say, I don't like to stay complacent and being like, oh, this is the way I do it and that's it. I do have certain ways that I don't like to change some of my workflows, but I am very open-minded and I love to always keep the textbook open in learning.
But you said you're constantly the student. One of the things that's really important to mention, and I know this because of the millions of conversations we've had, you still get nervous when you're doing new things. You still get apprehensive. It's like, I think there's a misconception that some of us in our different careers get to a certain point in time and people go, oh my God, they're so good at what they do that we're not human or we don't have feelings or we don't get scared shitless. I think one of the things that makes you better at what you do is the fact that you do get scared shitless. You do get uncomfortable. you do get nervous and apprehensive, but you still keep
Right.
on doing it. There is no point where we're at a certain place and we go, okay, now we're freewheeling.
Yeah.
You never get to that point. And if you
And if I
do, you're
do,
going to fail.
I'll know that I just don't care anymore, and then I'll know that's my exit. Yeah,
Right, and move
that's
on
my
and do
exit.
something
And
else.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm that way because I care. I love, like I love what I do.
Right.
So yeah, very true.
Yeah. I worked on.
I was just going to add to it. I had a great metaphor for all of this, for improving yourself over time. In my younger years, I was really into golf, and I was taking golf lessons from a pretty reputable pro here in town. And he said something to me that has always stuck with me, and I've used it in my career, even going forward. And we were on the range one day hitting shots, and somehow it came up. He goes, "You know the difference between you and Tiger Woods?" And, I thought he was being cheeky, but I was like, well, I know there's a big difference. But he said, the difference between you and Tiger Woods is his bad shots are way better than your bad shots. Like when you hit a perfect shot, when you hit something within 4 feet of the pin and he hits it within 4 feet of the pin, you're equal. But his bad shots, his mistakes are way better than your mistakes. Your mistakes are way bigger right now. So he says, you want to improve? Improve your mistakes. Make your mistakes better.
Oh,
improve the quality of your mistakes. And
I love that wording.
Just stuck with me like it was like a diamond through the forehead. I was just like, oh my gosh. So when I'm working with young people now, or people just getting into it, it's like, look, when you get that bass drum sound or that vocal sound and it's fantastic, and I do this, we're on par. But you look at our work throughout the entire day, I make way less mistakes than you do, or I may make way smaller mistakes than you're going to make. And those are born of experience, not knowledge,
Very true.
So, it was a really rich comment for me. I just thought, oh boy, there's some gold in that. There's some real pearls of wisdom in that I can use everywhere.
So why don't we transition from that to what is one piece of advice you think everyone entering pro audio should know? And I want 3 words that are qualities that people need to exceed in the industry. So, be a good hang is mine. I know that's 4, but I get 2 because I'm the host. But, persistence, blah, 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 blah. So, best tip.
Oh, you want 3 from each of us, or you just want all of us to pick one each?
No, you get 3, and best tips, best advice to get into the field right now, because it's hard enough to get in anyway, and now it's made harder because of everything that's going on. So for people that are just getting in or wanting to get into pro audio, best advice.
I'm going to stop you there
words.
for 1 second and just offer an alternative perspective there, right? Saying how hard it is to get into the business right now. The pandemic has created incredible opportunity to get in right now.
Agreed.
It's an opportunity right now.
Okay, how do the people trying to get in take advantage of that?
Well, I'll speak solely from my world. Call somebody at a sound company and say you need a job. And then prove that you can, and then show up. I mean, show up and do the work.
I'm going to second that. The easiest first step to make is actually that question. It's like, I'm looking for a job. One of the things that I find from the younger generation right now is they're so scared of somebody saying no that they don't ask that first easiest question, which is, I'm looking for a gig, and then showing up. My first coffee boy job was because I hassled them, and I used the dripping tap theory. It's like I hassled them every day for 3 freaking weeks before the engineer finally said, look, just come in and shut up. And I did, but that's how I got my first coffee boy job. But the people don't like to hear no as much in this generation. And I think if you can push past that first no, the second no gets easier. The third one is easy, but somewhere down the line, there's going to be a yes, as long as you keep on consistently showing up on that one.
But I think that's also coupled up with, I'm going to sound like the old guy in the room here, but the young people that are coming in, they set the expectation too high for where they want to be right out of the gate. It's like that, it's that instant gratification kind of generation of people, where it's like, I expect to come in and be able to do something meaningful right away. It's like, relax. If this is, you're in this for the long haul here, not the short. I tell people all the time that are trying to get into live sound, it's like, look, get in at a place where there's no spotlight shining on you, because you need to get in and fuck it up a whole bunch before you do something meaningful here. So I just take the long road. Be patient.
Patience is so Karen, you asked for some words. So backing up what Robert just said, patience. I think the simple fact that the high expectations one, if I hear one more person come up to me and go, yo man, I got a certificate, I'm gonna win a Grammy next week, and I want to make beats, it's like my head is gonna spin. If you want to work in, and Karen, you said pro audio, let's broaden it out. Just audio.
Sure. Yeah.
Whether it's live sound, studio sound, professional, or any of those, any skill you can possibly get is going to be beneficial. So if you have a chance to go and work in post-production, do it. If you have a chance to go and work in a radio station production studio, do it. That's where I started. If you have a chance to go and work in Foley, you can do it. Any of those, say yes. And say yes regardless, because all of that experience establishes who you are. And it establishes and defines how you deal with people. And one of the most important things that you can learn to get into this industry is you need to be a good people dealer. You need to be a good people person. If there's one reference you're going to get from Marcella or somebody else, and any of the people Marcella has had interning with her, the first question that usually comes up is, what are they like? She's a good person. It's like, he's a good guy. It's like, first one, okay, tick. Okay, do I need to teach him anything? He needs to be this. But the personality and the ability to be socially accepting and be polite and humble and respectful and patient goes a hugely long way.
Because you end up spending a lot of time together in small rooms or wherever, but it's not like you're just there together for a couple hours. You can spend long hours together.
Yeah, and you have to be able to listen, not listen just to work out what you're going to say next.
And it seems to me like with all of you, and I know I've done this, that you just say yes to anything, whether or not you know how to do it. You say yes, you get it, and then you learn it before you have to go do it.
Another building block on how my career goes. I said yes to everything, and then I was like, okay. Then I'd go in the back of the room and start like, there wasn't like these smartphones that there are today. Like I was like grabbing manuals and just like, okay, how do I figure this out? I already said yes,
Right. And one of those times I was honored that she said yes to something and then called me and said, okay, I just said yes to this.
I did.
How do I do that?
I do.
It's like,
I'll give you all one exception to this yes rule. And this was a life experience where I had to deal with this, and it was working with Prince. And he had I can go into the long story. We could be here for another hour here, but he had a reputation of kind of churning through people, and one of the things I kind of got burned by this earlier in my career, so I saw it coming. But he had this tendency to ask you to do something that you needed to say no to. It was a test for him to see if you were going to be a yes man, because he had a lot of yes men before me, that would say, oh yeah, we can do that, and then of course, after a while he would start doing that and going, okay, you're not here for anything more than a paycheck. You're just going to say yes to anything that I ask. Right. So it became this kind of test. And apparently I was the first guy that sat in that seat that went, hang on, we're not going to do that. Okay. Here's why this is not going to work. Okay. But you had to be able to back that up. I mean, you had to release some capital there to go, okay, I see what you're doing there, but no, here's why this is not going to work. And his respect for me grew immensely when I was able to say no to him, So,
but you didn't just say no.
No.
You did the most important thing, which is you do have to learn how to say no in this industry. Otherwise, you'll work 24/7. But there's no, and then there's we can't do that. This is the reason why. What I would suggest is we do this instead.
Option.
And if you give options, you're going to go further. The other important one is especially with new engineers or new mixers or people even doing beats or anything else, is somebody says, okay, I want it within this time frame. And you look at it and go, okay, right. And so many people say, because they're straight out of the gate, they say, yes, I can do that. And then they try and kill themselves to make it work when it's not going to work. Whereas 99.9% of the time, if you say, I can't do it in that frame, but I can do it in this time frame, does that work? The client will be fine because you've given them an option. One of the most important, this is a slight sidetrack, but it's not really. One of the most smart inventions when it comes to people's expectations happened on one of the busiest railway stations in London, where rather than spending billions of dollars replacing all of the trains for faster trains, they put dot matrix signs on the platform that told people with a realistic expectation of what time the train would actually turn up, and everybody was happy. And that one of those things is one of those things I used to prove to people. It's like, if you tell someone, your expectation is a bit too tight, but we can do it in this time, and they know that, then they're going to be fine with that. Yeah. But it actually takes a teeny weeny bit of balls as a newbie to be able to have the confidence and step up and do that. And that's yet another one of those, fuck it, what's the worst that could happen moments.
I think you have to kind of know your own boundaries there, right? I mean, you got to know what your capabilities are there. Not that you can't exceed them, but if you're going to say, okay, well, this is how I think we should do this, then you better be able to do that,
Under promise, over deliver is great, but generally speaking, it's like I try very, very hard never to go, yes, I can do it in faster time than anybody else, because I used to, but it also, every other area of your life suffers.
But that's experience, right?
Well, one of the questions that we got from one of the attendees is, how do you keep pushing on when you're all burnt out? So, Robert, you had a great answer because we talked about this before we started recording.
Well, I flippantly asked the question, why would you continue if you burn out? So, I mean, there's times, obviously, when you are going to have to push through and get something done. And, you got to, you can be I've been there. I have absolutely been there. I give you the Reader's Digest version of a story where I absolutely went past the limit and ended up in the hospital. In the 80s, I did a tour with Def Leppard, a big tour where it went on. By the time it was over, it was probably 16 months of touring. And we had videotaped that tour, and the band really wanted me to mix the audio for the video. So the minute the tour was finished, I flew to Holland, checked into Hilversum or at Whistle Lord Studios there, and teamed up with a guy named John Schmidt. We were kind of partnered up on it. But the deadline was absolutely crushing for this video. I mean, we had to have this done in about 7-8 days. And it was, mix 28 songs, something like that. I mean, it was just crazy. So we worked 24 hours a day at the studio. We were working in 8-hour shifts. John would set up a mix. I would come in and finish it. And we just kept this cycle going the entire time. I remember walking out to the lobby at one point, and it was just at the changeover between dusk and dawn, and you could have put a gun to my head. I could not have told you whether it was 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. I just didn't know. Finished the project, got it done, flew straight to rehearsals for another tour. I remember, and this was a time, when you could come off airplanes, et cetera. And I walked off the airplane. My wife was waiting for me there. I walked right past her. She didn't recognize me. I didn't recognize her. I had these huge dark circles under my eyes. I know Marcella's been here. And, at the end of the day, I just I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. And finally, she just kind of went, I think we need to kind of check you into the hospital for a little bit, just kind of get you to calm down. And long story short, I did go to the hospital for a little bit and was able to get back to work. But, that was one of those situations where you just had to push through it, or you had to give up the project, one of the two. I sacrificed some health to get that done. Would I do that again today?
Right. I think, yeah.
Probably not.
If you're
Probably not.
burnt out, I mean, I had to learn pretty much very similarly. Like, I mean, early on, I would, work at the studio. When I was working at the Hit Factory as an assistant, I started working as an engineer with an artist, her name Carrie Hilson, but I was still doing my hours as an assist. I'm sorry, I was still I was still doing my hours as an assistant, but then also like working like overtime and on the side working with Carrie. And it became where I was working like weeks, sleeping at the studio, waking up, doing it all over again, doing it. So after like 2 weeks, I was like, you know what? Let me just go home tonight. I'm exhausted, but it was like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I drove home too tired. And literally, right when I was pulling into the complex where I lived, I fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a street light. And
Wow.
yeah, luckily I was fine. And but it was an awakening moment for me. It was like, I mean, literally, it was like, oh, I woke up, but it was just like, I can't do this. If I'm gonna do this, I got to be smart about it. And then I still almost didn't really even learn my lesson, because I remember like after that, I was working these crazy hours, not eating right, drinking Red Bull to stay up, like like cans and cans a day, not drinking real, water or really, nutritious foods and drinks. And I remember I was walking down the aisle upstairs in the Hit Factory, going to Studio B, with the back room upstairs, and I thought it felt like somebody from behind me hit me with like a sledgehammer in my back, and I just could not walk. I was in the most excruciating pain, and my coworker's like, he was like, "We got to get you to the hospital." And what ended up happening was I basically like almost my kidneys almost failed, from not like drinking
Wow.
water and just only drinking Red Bulls and not really eating good foods. And I was hospitalized. And then that's when I really started realizing, like, if I'm gonna do this, I got to do this the right way, And I really started my path on the fitness side of things right after that, like, because I was like 22 at the time, and I was like, I can't keep doing this, I gotta take care of myself. I'm going to be working these long
Well,
hours.
we all kind of come from that sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing, right? I mean, we all kind of grew up on that, and there was this kind of weird nobility that came
Yeah.
along with it. It's like, it's
It was like a
noble, it's
badge.
heroic,
Yeah.
it's this
Very
badge of
true.
honor that we want to
Yeah.
wear. But man, it can wrap around and slap you in the face pretty hard. I mean, for me, I think this was like 1990. I was out on tour with an opening act for the Rolling Stones, and realizing that, okay, here's Mr. Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, Mick Jagger, blah, blah, blah. I mean, here's the guy. He's on the treadmill 6 miles a day, getting ready for that show. I mean, this is a guy that's not out partying every night, blah, blah, blah. That was kind of just one of those kind of like,
Interesting.
yeah, he takes it seriously. Maybe I should too,
I think what it comes down to when we're talking about, I think back to the original part of this conversation, which was about how do we help the youth who are walking into our industry define what's good and what's bad, and what's a good path, what's a bad path, and how to actually keep moving forward. There is no such thing as I don't have time to eat well or exercise mentally or physically. If you don't have time, then something else in your life is completely wrong and you need to adjust it. There needs to be time. Otherwise, there's not going to be much of you left. You need that to be healthy in any career. I think you need to be able to go, okay, right, this is my defined time. This is my passion's defined time. If you let those borders cross too much and there's no time for you, whether it's snowboarding or hiking in Montana or Wyoming or anything, photography, there needs to be something separate for your brain and for your body. Otherwise, you are just your own worst enemy, and you'll end up hitting a pole like Marcella did. And Robert, you've hit a metaphorical pole, and I've hit a few as well. So
without a doubt.
Okay, so I have one question left. We won't be able to talk about snowboarding. I'm so sad.
What?
But I do
I'm
want
out.
to.
why?
I do want to mention to Marcella, Klay Thompson is back, and oh my God, The Warriors are going to win the championship.
Really, you're gonna throw the Warriors at me.
Listen,
Klay Thompson, he was out.
I am in Phoenix right now.
974 days.
The Suns, you've heard of them, right? You have heard of them.
974 days. He came back his first game in, scored his first shot, dunked, and scored 3. He ended up 17 points.
Is that the which one? Are we talking basketball or American
NBA.
football or which
Basketball.
one? Yeah.
one? Okay.
No,
cool.
listen,
All
they
right,
look good.
cool.
They look
Okay.
good. We'll see though. 'Cause the Heat is looking really good too. So.
I know. They are.
The Heat laid it
Okay.
on us the other night.
Yes, they did.
Speaking of that. Boy.
Okay, final question.
I'd just like to point out that the Brisbane Tigers rugby team did a really good job last weekend.
Okay, final question. We're having a potluck and this is my favorite because everybody's a foodie except me, so this works out well. We're having a potluck to welcome Michael to his new home in Australia. And I want to know what everybody's bringing, what we're drinking, and what we're talking about. So,
Ooh.
Marcella,
All right, so
you
what am I
start.
bringing? What am I bringing? What am I bringing?
You just got off a 13-hour flight. I'd just be grateful just to have you.
I'm bringing myself with a bottle of Clase Azul tequila because I love tequila.
There you
And
go.
we are talking about Tasmanian devils because I'm so curious about all that.
God damn it. There you
All
go.
right.
I'm in.
Okay, Robert.
All right. Let's see. Okay. So
Robert's only there if a band is touring, by the way.
all right. I'm bringing shark steaks to
Ooh.
eat. We're bringing some shark steaks. We'll put them on the barbie. And then
Okay, you are being deported for that statement.
my day is looking up. Let's see. We're going to talk about why is the Great Barrier Reef going away. We're going to get into some heavy conversation on that over a glass of, we'll go with the Basil Hayden. We'll have a little glass of Basil Hayden over a big ice cube.
Oh my God, I'm going to be mixing drinks big time.
Okay, is it my turn?
Your turn.
That's great. Mm.
Okay. We're going to be drinking Foster's because that's Michael's favorite beer.
Oh, I was going to say that. I just thought he was so much more than that.
No. And
Foster's is fucking brewed in Quebec. It's not Australian owned. Yeah, and if you go and ask for it, the barman will go, "Oh, you like the taste of piss, do you?" Nobody in Australia drinks Foster's, and she knows it. Karen knows it.
So
Okay,
she baited
so
you there.
then-
That's good. I love it.
we did.
Totally.
So we'll be you'll be making margaritas with how you do that. And I don't
Not the tequila that Marcella brought. I'm
No,
not.
we're-
That's
no, we're just-
it's
we're
wasted
drinking
on
that, yeah.
margaritas.
Yeah,
Um,
you
Said that.
and we're going to be talking about where we're going to go scuba diving.
Ooh.
Boom.
Okay, so off Fraser, we're going scuba diving off Fraser Island. We're then going scuba diving off Great Capital Island in the Whitsundays, and then I'll take you out on the boat up just above Townsville on what we call Maggie Island, Magnetic Island. And then none of you are going to want to leave. One of the biggest things about Australia is I do not have one American friend who has not wanted to live in Australia after they've come and
I've never
visit.
been.
Okay.
Yeah,
Count
I've
me
never
in.
been
Yeah.
I
me
want to be
too.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay,
sooner
that'll
than
be our
later.
next
for
trip.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I always talk about community in all of my podcasts, and you guys all know it's important to me. And if you want, I know that we all talked about it individually. So why don't we end this just talking about what you think community is right now? So Robert, why don't we start with you?
Well, I mean, we over the past 2 years, we've redefined what community is, haven't we? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it is certainly this situation of caring for each other and showing empathy for each other in a meaningful and real way, not just empathy for people that think the way I think or that agree with the things I agree with. We have got to find a way in this world to live together. I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, this kind of mindset that is permeating out there of we want to get rid of all the people that we don't agree with. Where are you going to go? I mean, we've got to find a way. We've got to find some middle ground and be able to survive with one another here. So, if that's not at the basis of community, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Marcella?
yeah, to piggyback off that, I mean, community is, you know, the love for one another, stranger or family, it doesn't matter. I think, community with where we're at today with technology, it's beyond what we are, what it is, on a local level. It's worldwide. You can access and reach and speak to people from across the world so easily, or people, and I think it's just really basic, decent, just human attitude towards each other, and just knowing that like we're all one. We are all
Yeah.
one, and
Right.
we're all here on this one planet. And I just think being like Robert said, just being kind, just being kind to each other, because it's not like we can leave. Like, it's like we're here. So yeah.
Right. Right.
I'll just add to that and say, it's one of the things I absolutely have loved and adored about touring in my lifetime is that every day you get to step into a little bit different culture, a little bit different environment every day that you're out there around the world, and you start to see the commonality in it all. Doesn't matter whether you're in Eastern Asia, Europe, America, South America, at some point, there's some commonality to all of it. We all love our families. We all just want to get along. We all just want to get by, right? Can't we just find that as some common ground here?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Michael, you get to wrap up. What does community mean to you?
Community means that we are all understanding that everybody is fighting a battle that nobody else knows about. Everybody has fears that nobody else knows about, and we have to understand that. We have to have empathy for that, and we have to nurture that. The easiest thing to do is forget that other people have their own struggles. And a community that works well together remembers that everybody has their own struggles and has empathy and patience for that. And I think that's what I want to see more of.
Okay.
Second that.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. And I am so happy that the three of you are part of my community. So thank you, Robert, Marcella, and Michael, for being part of this special edition of One and Done.